Welcome to my garden studio. Today we're doing back to basics, which is a tutorial, a thought. It's my number 4, but what we're doing is 3-point perspective. So the first thing I'm going to do, we used to have our horizon line around about the middle, but for this tutorial we're doing a horizon line which is our eye level. Okay, that's our eye level, and I'm putting it high on my page. You must remember that it doesn't have to be on the page. It can be above the page, it can be off the page at the bottom. That doesn't matter. So what I'm going to mark this being our vanishing points. We've got 1, 2, and for this tutorial, this idea is going to have a third vanishing point, which is absolutely off the page. It's absolutely down at the bottom of the page. So for now, I'm going to start sketching up the box. We're using the same box, but what I'm looking at now is as if I were looking at the box from the top. So it's what we call a bird's eye view. I like to think of it as a helicopter view. So this could be a building, it could be an object on a table, and what I'm doing is I'm looking at it into the box with a vanishing point to the right and a vanishing point to the left and a vanishing point to the bottom. So this is what we're going to sketch, and let's see how it goes. The next part of it is going to be coloring it so that our charcoal pencil and the acrylic paint is going to work together and give us our values and our grays and our darks, lights and middle tones. Okay, so the first point is to anything that's parallel. So if you look at a box like that, you've got parallel lines there and parallel lines there. This box has these flaps on it, and they're not parallel. There's a parallel line here and here, but these are not, so we're going to assume where those are situated. So we start. Let's get our lines in. We're going to go aim towards this point, which is our 1 vanishing point. The vanishing point is where you would not see if it were to continue, if the line had to continue, or the box had to continue, you'd get to a stage where you couldn't see it anymore. That's a vanishing point. A vanishing point and a vanishing point. Okay, so at the moment we're going to get this point here, our 1 vanishing point. I'm using my ruler to illustrate how important it is that that stays as a pivot. So I'm holding it with my thumb and it stays as an absolute pivot. I'm holding it with my finger and that goes towards the vanishing point. And when you do this exercise, you might think it's extreme, it's really, really extreme to have such a strange angle, but in fact try it and you see that it actually does work. Now on my carton I have these flaps at the bottom, and I'm going to ignore those flaps. I'm going to put them away almost as if we are sitting straight onto a table and I'm looking into the top of the box. Okay, so that's the beginning, and trust your measure, trust your eye. You might, at the beginning, you might think, no way, man, it's crazy. But it actually is such an extreme angle. Remembering that if there's a parallel line, if there's something that's parallel, like this line and this line, then that is going to be in perspective. But these lines on the side of the flap here don't necessarily fall into perspective. So I'm putting my ruler on the point, and there's my angle, and everything that happens on that horizontal of the actual carton is going to fall on this arc that happens here. The difficulty is going to be not having a point on my page. It's more, as it comes off the page, it's more on my lap as I'm talking to you. So I'm going to take it as it's going to be there, if it were there, and if I take my hand off the page, I'm going to get an arc that happens this way. So we are confirming this front edge of the box right here, and then we do that again. And trust your ruler, trust your eye. It seems weird, it seems like it's not supposed to be like that, but in fact that's exactly what you're seeing. So these marks here are going to be drawn by assuming where they might be. Then I've got another flap on this side, so I'm going to look at my flap, try and get what we call sight sizing. So I'm putting my pencil on the edge of this flap here, and then I'll drop it down, and that's where the angle will be, roughly there. Now that line and that line are parallel, so they go to the vanishing point. So it's right up here, up there. And what's really, really cool about using acrylic and a charcoal pencil is that you can correct anything. You can correct it. It's almost like an eraser. So there's my vanishing point, and that's a parallel line to that. So I must make sure that this edge goes all the way to the vanishing point. It goes to the vanishing point, that side. Then I've got a strange angle, which I can just assume that that's going to be there. And then I have a strange angle again for the other flap, this flap over here. And I'm going to, that's parallel to that. So that goes to this vanishing point. You have to, in a way, it's very logical, and it might look confusing, but once you get the basics of it, you now have a box that looks like it's going away in 3 points. So 3-point perspective, 1, 2, and 3 down the bottom. And once we get our tone in, you'll see how this actually starts to form. Instead of strange shapes like this, it actually starts to form. Here's one more line I want to do. Imagining this is my vanishing point down the bottom, off my page. Okay, there's my arcing zigzag marks. There's one that happens there too, so I'm going to put that in. Put it in right there. And now you can start seeing the box actually start to be forming as a three-dimensional thing. And everything you see, your laptop, your computer, your tree, your apple, your bowl of fruit or a bowl of flowers, everything you see is actually in perspective. And once you start to pay attention to it, you realize how much the change is between the front as large and the back as small. So we've plotted the box as it is, the carton as it is. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to indicate my light direction. I tend to like it coming from the top right hand side. So that's what I actually want to do. What an amazing day in the garden studio. The one thing I would like to point out is the extreme angles that happen as you're doing perspective. And my advice and my thoughts of it is trust your ruler. It actually is exactly like that. I'm pivoting my finger on this vanishing point here. We've got one there, we've got another one there, and we've got one that's way off the page. It's almost at my lap area. So trust that angle. Trust it. Don't try and change it thinking that this is really weird, because when you put it together, it looks right. There is one line that's not right here, and that's this line here. So I'm going to either paint it out, or it's actually not too bad. I'm just going to put a deeper mark in here. Okay, so we've got light coming in from this right hand side. It could come from the right or the left. Certainly not, it's very strange to have light coming from the bottom. We like to see light coming from the top. So I'm choosing it from the right hand side, okay, just like that. Which mean, and it could also come from the front, right front, or right back. It could come from the top. So many things change. But at the moment I'm choosing it to come from at the back, and it's coming from the right hand side. So this panel is going to be dark. This panel will be dark because it's got a shadow. And what you want is to have 3 tones as a basic. So you've got very dark, very light, and middle tone. And usually they're opposite. They're going to switch. So in other words, if this is very dark, then the next one is going to be maybe a middle tone. Okay, and the next one is going to be very light. So I'm not going to touch that. This is going to be a middle tone. Imagining the light is coming from here, and we've got a middle tone here. So there's our middle tone, and this is super dark. So I'm going to make sure that that's super dark. What that means is, if this is a panel, as if you were looking at the box like that, the carton, this panel is dark, this panel is dark, and this panel is something else. It's not dark. It's not going to be super dark. So this is going to be super dark. And you almost have to analyze the real carton. Look at the real carton and get a sense of what you're doing here. So this is super light. Then this must be a middle tone. This one here is a middle tone. This one's bouncing, light is bouncing back off this one. Light is bouncing back off this one. Mid-tone. Let's do an M in here. Let's do an M in there, mid-tone. Let's do an M in there. So that gives me an idea of what my carton's doing. Now, we're going to paint through this whole thing and form the acrylic mixture with the charcoal, and then we'll get a better idea. What I'm doing now is I'm going to actually cast a shadow in perspective from my light source. Now I don't want to actually follow this line. I want to give it a bit of an angle. So let's call it like that. And the shadow that happens is also in perspective. So where would that light, would it touch this corner of the back of the carton, or would it touch the corner here? So I would assume that it's going to touch the corner here. And let's say we go, light source comes from there, and we got a shadow that happens across that bottom there. So now the fun part starts, where we mixing the charcoal with acrylic. So I'm going to call this a mid-tone. It could be super dark, but then it's going to argue with this panel here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a mid-tone here, and that runs off the page. Maybe goes from dark to light, that's okay. But we're going to call this one a mid-tone as well. So already you can start to see how this carton is forming, and that it's so easy to do, but follow the rules. The first step, horizon line. Where are your eyes? Are they up there? Are you looking into the carton? Are you looking into the carton, or are you looking up at the carton, it all changes. The perspective of the carton changes completely when you've turned it around. What I must say is that the principle of perspective applies to every single object that you're looking at. Whether you're looking at a bottle, a container, or whether you're looking at a tree, or any aspect of reality in terms of what you're seeing carries perspective. Things at the back are small. The same thing close to you is big. What I want to point out now is that's my horizon line. In other words, that's my eye level there. But I'm going to indicate the edge of a table, which is going to be somewhere down the bottom, which is not my eye level. It's not my eye level. It's something else. It's as if the carton was sitting on the edge of a table. So let's put that in. And interestingly enough, this table will also have a vanishing point. So the vanishing point will be different to the box. The box can be twisted in any direction, and the table has its own vanishing point. Now, that's not to be confusing. That's just to indicate there's another aspect to the vanishing point. So let's make the vanishing point somewhere up here, and that's the edge of my table. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to middle tone this entire table. So let's just do that, and then when we smudge it in, we're going to paint it with acrylic paint, which we're starting with right now. So there we go. Get my acrylic out. I actually like painting in oils, but acrylic is beautiful because it dries so quickly. I'm going to just color this out, and because it's such a nice day, it's nice and warm, we're heading towards fall, which is autumn, so it is cooling down. The weather is cooling down, but it's still warm enough to have a fantastic garden, studio, and paint outside. I love it. You can hear the birds in the background. They always are making, the doves are making their sound calls and stuff. So I'm just whitening out here. Let's get a smaller brush in there. Got a smaller brush here, and it's a very stiff brush, sort of firm. And we're just putting that in there. For this exercise, don't worry too much about the lines being straight and accurate and all that stuff. What I want is a light background, and where there's a light background, I'm going to have a middle tone on the table, on the surface here. And keep that line of the edge of the table. This shadow down here is going to be mid-tone. I really love the way charcoal and paint mix together. There's a very subtle difference here between the table and the background. And what I want to do is encourage you to do this kind of exercise every now and then, every so often, because it gets your eye in. It keeps your eye in with regard to how form and shape work together. So what I'm going to do now, I could do any part of it, but what I'm going to do now is see what happens with the acrylic and the charcoal here on the side of the panel. And I'm really scrubbing it in so that it picks up that charcoal and gives me quite a dark area. Once this is dry, you can actually put the charcoal back on again and take it even darker, which is not a bad idea. So that's scrubbing that in, getting all the way to the edge, turning my brush over, and being this dark, this panel on the inside of the carton almost wants to be the same. So it's too light. Okay, we'll make a plan there, no problem. We could have a smaller brush because it's a smaller area, and we just make it. I'm going to wait for this to dry, and I'm going to make it even darker. So I'm going to put that in, and then I'm going to go into this panel and scrub it in as much as I can. So it's going to be dark, dark, dark. The more you scrub it, the more it picks up that charcoal. Now we start to see the form of this carton actually happening. I want to make this darker because this corner is, I want to make sure that that looks like a table. Now you might look at it and think, oh man, he's like working so quickly. Just pause the video. If you want to copy this idea, pause the video. Remember, it's 3-point perspective. 1, 2, and then 3 off my page. So that's what we're doing. So now what I'm going to do is work in the middle, the mid-tones, 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So let's get some paint in here. And we work the middle tones, the mid-tones in. It's really nice working with charcoal and paint. My M is standing out, so I'm going to wait for this to dry again. And there's another mid-tone over there. So that's like a grey, 50% grey. Let's get that in there. And then we get another mid-tone in here. I'm using a brush that's really messed up. It's like a real messed up brush. And that's perfect for this job because you're scrubbing the brush in and it damages the brush. But you don't throw brushes away. You never throw brushes away. Even if you use them as a mixing stick. A mixing stick for mixing up your paint. Brushes are they're your friends. It's really like that. It's cool. Okay, so we got a scrubber, and right. This doesn't have to be all that neat. Now, this is confusing. And this is confusing. So what we're going to do here is make it pure, almost pure white. There and there and there. Light is coming from the top right hand side. Now I'm going to highlight the very strong highlights. In other words, I don't want to scrub in charcoal too much. I just want to take this line out of here. So I'm going to leave quite a heavy acrylic white on top there and again on this panel. So remembering that we're doing the tone in 3s. So very strong highlight, a very strong shadow area, which we're going to get to now, and then a mid-tone. The mid-tones are actually very important. Try and remember where those mid-tones are. So we've got highlights, very strong white. It's a wonderful exercise. You should try it. And don't forget to put it up on your wall of your studio because you can refer to it all the time. Now, I think we're going to darken this and darken this panel. This panel and this panel are going to be darker. Right at the moment, I'm thinking that this panel needs to be mid-tone. So I'm going to put some charcoal back in here. A little bit of charcoal back in here so that it goes to a mid-tone. And there we go. So it's smudging that in, getting rid of the writing, the M that I put in there. This is light, but that's okay. We're going to just smudge that in, mid-tone, pick up some charcoal from the edge, and now I'm going to, so at a point you stop and you say, okay, cool, look at it from a distance, and we can also get rid of this M and mid-tone this shadow, the shadow that's being cast across here. So now what I want to do, I'm going to take normal black. I don't even have a palette, so I'm going to stick it on my desk. And what's really nice now is we're going to put the super dark in. And the super dark is, remembering light is coming from here, so we're going to darken this panel really, really dark. Okay, and we're going to darken this panel because it's the same. It's the same aspect, the same facet of the painting. And then pick up some paint there and run it across there, and then this panel becomes super dark. Get some more black and get the edge. It's almost like you're sketching with a paintbrush, you know, you're sketching, and it's a wonderful little paintbrush. It just works perfectly for what I need. Wow, man, that's amazing. Okay, so we look at this entire object, 1 point, 2 point, and 3 point perspective. We could, you know what, you see this little triangle on the side here? We could actually darken that triangle as well. Get it really dark, and then kind of fade it out. Fade it out with the brush, dry acrylic brush, and then get that edge there. Now I'm a little bit worried about the M that happens in here. I want that to be a more of a mid-tone, so I'm going to mix up a mid-tone here and put that in here, and then you see how that works. And we're coming close to the end of this little exercise. Try it at home. Try it in your studio. Try it in your studio. You can do it so many times and you can see how quick it is. It's not a long exercise. And we end up with a box. There we go. I think we're done. I think we're finished. Maybe blend this like in. So what we've done is, I'm going to put that away. We look at the container, our carton container, and that's what we did. Looking into the container as if we were looking into it from the top, like a bird's eye view, and then deciding where your eye level is, then deciding where your vanishing points are, and then your third vanishing point, and then what we do is color it with super dark, super light, and middle tone. So thanks for watching. That's it. So what's been suggested, very interestingly, is a friend of mine said that this little corner here was not right, so I'm going to change that, and I agree. So I'm going to add a little piece on this corner here, and then what I'm going to do is, what I'm also going to confirm this mark that is the edge of the table. So we're going to leave that like it is. Remember that this is just an exercise and you can actually change it. So I'm using my acrylic paint. I use my little brush. I want to dry this brush off, so I'll just wipe it on my pants like that. But this little corner actually needs to be like that, and that's a better representation of the box. The carton that we've got is it's a better representation of what this carton looks like. Okay, so a little corner, there's a strange shape, but if I just add this piece here, so I'd like to say thank you to my friend, to, you know, in terms of his suggestion. And I think we're at the end of this exercise. That's fine. Put that in the water and we close up our acrylic paint, and I think that's the end of Back to Basics number 4. We'll go back to Basics number 5 and that will be 4-point perspective, which is going to be a little bit more complicated. So watch the previous videos, and like and share and subscribe if you want to. I've got another idea here. It's crazy, but I'm going to actually lighten the shadow. I'm going to lighten the shadow here. You see what's so nice about using charcoal and acrylic paint as a basic medium, a drawing medium, is you can just change your mind. You can change your mind at any time, and it's an exercise. It's learning about the basic principles of art making. So we lighten that, we throw that in the water, and that's it. There we go. There's my box, and how we get it. It's really cool. It's like a blend of abstraction and reality, you know, painting something real. And there we go. That's the box. Simple as that. Follow the principles of 1 and 2, and then 3-point perspective, which is off the page. Thanks for watching.